People are not going to caravan or otherwise stampede our border.
Today's message from the Justice Department on border crossings. A billionaire backs a San Diego campaign for district attorney, and questions behind the donation made by a political action committee connected to George Soros.
Challenge is good. Change is good. I think you have a chance to build more complacency if you know that you don't have anybody running against you.
And the school board candidates in the city of San Diego are all running unopposed. Next, the voters who are demanding reform. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebone Monet. Attorney General Jeff Sessions was in San Diego today to announce a zero-tolerance policy when it comes to illegal border crossings. He says the Department of Homeland Security will now refer 100% of those cases to the Department of Justice for prosecution. KPBS Frontiers reporter Jean Guerrero has a story.
I'm here at the U.S.-Mexico border fence in Imperial Beach, where Attorney General Jeff Sessions just spoke.
I have put in place a zero-tolerance policy for illegal entry on our southwest border.
Sessions spoke alongside the Deputy Director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Thomas Homan. They say anyone who enters the U.S. outside of a port of entry will be criminally prosecuted from this point forward, rather than simply deported.
If you cross the border unlawfully, then we will prosecute you. It's that simple.
Sessions says the zero tolerance applies even to people seeking asylum in the U.S. Federal law says people can ask for asylum regardless of how they enter the country. Sessions says they'll maintain that right, but they'll also be prosecuted. He says he's sending more prosecutors and immigration judges to the border to accomplish this.
I have sent 35 prosecutors to the southwest border and moved 18 immigration judges to the border.
A protester, William Johnson, interrupted the event with a bullhorn, shouting at Mr. Sessions.
Why are you here? Are you going to be separating families?
Sessions says the new policy was put in place because of a rise in illegal border crossings. Last week, 11 members of an asylum-seeking caravan were referred to the Department of Justice for prosecution. The officials were in San Diego after holding a similar press conference in Arizona. From the border, Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
The national immigration debate has largely focused on how a person enters the country. KPBS reporter Taryn Minto says a local effort focuses on what happens after newcomers arrive.
A series of community forums this month aims to gather public comment on how San Diego systems help newcomers integrate. The Welcoming San Diego initiative officially kicked off in February. The launch event highlighted the economic contributions of immigrants. Lead organizer Samuel Choi on Skype says he hopes this next stage will bring in an additional perspective.
We heard a lot from people who are mostly the leaders and practitioners in helping immigrants, but we want to hear from the immigrants themselves.
The input will be added to a plan intended to advise the city on where and how it can improve. Taryn Minto, KPBS News.
The Welcoming San Diego project is funded in part by Cal Endow, which is also a supporter of KPBS. Today, the county began sending mail ballots for the June primaries. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman says that means voters can expect to see them in their mailboxes by Wednesday.
The Registrar of Voters is mailing out 1.1 million ballots, which is a record for San Diego. Registrar of Voters Michael Vu says this comes as the region overall is seeing an increase in voters.
Well, we're currently at 1.67 million registered voters in the county. That's the highest number of registered voters that there have been in the county to date.
Vu says in the past, they usually see a decrease in registration for gubernatorial elections. About 65% of people in San Diego register to vote by mail, but the county still needs to fill more than 6,000 poll worker positions.
We do a 2-hour training on site as well as 2-hour online training, and we do provide a stipend anywhere from $75 to $175.
Of the 1.6 million registered voters in the county, Vu says 37% identify as Democrats, followed by 29% for both Republicans and independents. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
The California Republican Party did not reach a consensus this weekend on a major state race. The California GOP convention ended in San Diego Sunday without endorsing a Republican candidate for governor. Rancho Santa Fe businessman John Cox and Assemblyman Travis Allen were vying for the party's endorsement. Neither earned the 60% of votes needed. Cox got 55%, Allen 41%. 4% of delegates didn't endorse either candidate. 6 candidates are vying to unseat San Diego Council member Lori Zaff for District 2. Zaff is eligible for a third term because of redistricting. KPBS reporter Susan Murphy says some of the big issues are short-term vacation rentals, homelessness, and aging.
The challengers for the District 2 seat shared their ideas for change with a crowd of 150 during a recent forum at Claremont High School. Incumbent Lori Zapp did not attend. The council hopefuls agreed on many issues, including restricting short-term vacation rentals in single-family neighborhoods and increasing affordable housing. All agreed in boosting homeless services, but there were differing opinions on where to house those in need. The challengers are Jordan Bean, Jennifer Campbell, Randy Hahn, Kevin Melton, Brian Pease, and Daniel Schmikowski. District 2's coastal communities stretch from Point Loma to western Claremont to Pacific Beach. They offer sweeping ocean and bay views, but resident Carl Schilling says a closer look at sidewalks, streets, and parks shows the need for major improvements.
Like pipes, roads, we're having trouble getting those things fixed. And we keep getting those potholes all the time.
Schilling has lived in Claremont for 66 years. He says he'll be looking for a candidate dedicated to fixing up the neighborhood. The top 2 candidates who make it through the June 5th primary will go on to the general election in November. Susan Murphy, KPBS News.
Our media partner iNewsSource is following the money this election season. Here with the latest cash report in that District 2 City Council race is iNews reporter Jill Castellano.
There are 7 candidates competing for San Diego's City Council seat in District 2, which runs from Point Loma to Pacific Beach. Incumbent Lori Zapp has raised more money since January than anyone else in the race, with a total of $66,000. That brings her total campaign bank account to $258,000, 4 times as much as any other candidate. The second biggest fundraiser is Jennifer Campbell, who has raised $35,000 since January. The other candidates in the race have each raised less than $20,000 during that time. To learn more about the money in politics, go to data.inewssource.org. For KPBS, I'm iNewsSource reporter Jill Castellano.
iNewsSource has also been looking into outside spending in the San Diego County District Attorney's race. They found that since last week, billionaire investor George Soros has used a PAC to spend more than $400,000 to support Deputy Public Defender Genevieve Jones-Wright. Jones-Wright is challenging interim district attorney Summer Steffen. Academics say this is not typical for a DA's race.
This much money is very unusual for a local race like this, particularly out of district money. Outside of Congress, you don't see races like this attracting that much money.
Steffen has raised more than $485,000 for her campaign, and Jones-Wright has raised $205,000. Congressman Duncan Hunter has been elected to represent the 50th Congressional District 5 terms in a row, and he'd like a 6th. KPBS reporter Jade Hyman sat down with Hunter and spoke to him about guns, government solutions, and the criminal investigation into his campaign spending.
If you can identify issues with the government and the way that some things are run, like transportation, as you just said, what do you think should be in place to fix some of these systems that aren't working for people?
Well, in California, it's the state. And I think a way to fix California is to get rid of Jerry Brown and the Democrat legislature. That'd be a good start, putting California back on track. But if you're not going to do that, then move out of California, because California is on a bad road to stupid right now.
Would you support creating additional regulations on gun ownership?
No.
No universal background checks?
Oh, sure. I mean, we do background checks now. So universal background checks, good. Making sure people don't have mental illness or felonies, that would be good too, and we already check on those things, right? But anything that makes sure that bad people or people that are mentally ill or violent or who have been convicted that they can't buy a weapon, and those of us that have not been convicted of a crime, are not mentally ill, that we can. So what you're saying there is, for 99% of the American people, they should be able to keep and bear arms, carry concealed permits or concealed weapons. And for the 1% that either are felons or mentally ill, then no.
Assault weapons ban, do you agree with that? Or
No, what's an assault weapon? I'm asking you, what's an assault weapon?
an automatic weapon?
Automatic weapons have been illegal for 100 years, so that's not an assault weapon.
Okay.
An assault weapon, from people that I've said, I'll help you out here, is one that looks really mean. If I were to show you a hunting rifle made out of wood, or a hunting shotgun with a wood stock, you would say that's probably not an assault rifle. If I showed you the exact same rifle in like graphite black with cool blue steel on it, you'd say, wow, that looks pretty dangerous. That's an assault rifle. So calling it that means nothing. Machine guns have been illegal for over 100 years in this country. You can go to places in Nevada where you can shoot machine guns, but that's about it. A semi-automatic weapon is one which every time you pull the trigger, the weapon goes off. That's every shotgun pretty much, and pistol and or rifle. Some have bolt action, some are semi-automatic. But beyond what I just said, no more rules and regulations.
So the gun that was used, say, to shoot all of those folks in Las Vegas, you don't think that there should be a ban on those types of weapons?
On weapons?
Or accessibility, maybe? Or
the bump stock, yeah. And I think everybody agreed there's no reason to have bump stocks. That's what allowed him to shoot so quickly, but you can't aim very well.
Right. And I know you talked to high school kids today. I'm certain that gun laws and all of that were at the forefront of their mind. What were some of their concerns that they mentioned to you?
To some extent, they actually didn't mention concerns. What I brought up to the kids, and something that they all thought was pretty smart, and something that we could do federally, and it's pretty simple. I have three kids between 11 and 17. I have kids at my house all the time. Kids at my house all the time. I have weapons in my house, and when the kids' parents drop them off at my house to play with my kids, those parents have an implicit understanding that I'm going to protect their kids while they're at my house. Their kids are at my house. It's now my job to take care of their kids while they're at my place. I think schools need to have the exact same mindset. I think the school's job, it's incumbent upon them to protect my kid while my kid's not with me. So I can't protect them anymore, and I'm handing them off to you. It's now your job to protect them in whatever way that you can. I think one of the best ways to do that is you take people that are prior military, prior law enforcement, and are teachers. Let's just start there and do a pilot program of those people that are already trained in how to use a weapon, trained in tactics, techniques, and procedures. They already have all that training, and allow them to opt in to carry weapons on school grounds, or to have a weapon in their school desk, biometrically locked in there, so the teacher has to put their handprint on it to have the gun come out, and then they can defend those kids if something bad happens. Right? I think that's one of the first major steps that we ought to take, is arming those teachers that already have the training and the know-how to be able to carry a weapon in extremist situations.
You've got teachers who say they're not being paid enough to teach, who don't have books and pens and pencils for students. How do you propose getting training, weapons training for all teachers, and providing them with a weapon?
That's why you have some kind of a pilot program. Right? And I think that's something that we should do. That could be done on the federal level, federal grant money going to the schools that have people that want to participate in making their schools safer.
All right. We've interviewed several of your challengers in the 50th District, including El Cajon Mayor Bill Wells, a fellow Republican. He said he believes you'll eventually be unable to continue as a congressman because of the ongoing federal investigation into your alleged personal use of campaign funds. What's your reaction to that?
I don't have a reaction to it. It's been like a year and a half, I think, since this thing started. I've heard nothing. I've had no involvement with the Department of Justice. We've been doing nothing, actually, because we haven't been asked to do anything. So, I mean, people run for office all the time. People like higher power all the time. And you'll see politicians saying stuff like that all the time.
Did you misuse campaign funds?
No.
Were there mistakes made?
No.
No mistakes made?
I did not misuse any campaign funds, but thank you for asking.
Duncan Hunter, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right.
There are no challengers in this year's races to represent parents and children on the San Diego Unified School Board. 2 trustees will probably cruise into another term. KPBS education reporter Megan Burke says some community members are hoping to install a few speed bumps on the road to re-election.
What are the pros and cons of changing school board elections?
A few dozen parents, teachers, and community members gathered at Sherman Elementary School recently to learn about and weigh in on a handful of proposals to change how school board trustees are elected. Among them, establishing term limits, eliminating the district-wide runoff so trustees are selected only by the areas they'll represent, and adding board members so there's more representation to go around. The proposals stem from efforts as early as 2010 to shake up the school board. Most recently, a 2017 grand jury report recommended changes. Based on feedback from the meeting at Sherman and 4 others, the board could ask voters in November whether they agree.
They're in favor of keeping things the way they are now.
Trace Simmons attended the meeting and isn't sold.
I think that our school board is set up pretty well right now, and I feel that there's a good overall representation. I do feel that citizens need to be more aware of the fact that these are elected officials who tell the superintendent and the school district what to do. They set the policy.
This year's school board campaigns won't help get that message out because they're non-existent. Trustee Michael McQuarrie is running unopposed for the second time in the district's coastal region. Board President Kevin Beiser is also running unopposed to represent families from Scripps Ranch to City Heights. Brett Kezlavka is one of 2 people who pulled papers to run against Beiser but won't be on the ballot. He says he decided to pour his energy into bringing election reform to the ballot instead.
We need change within the memberships of the boards. We need to make sure that the parents and the communities have a better voice.
Kezlavka is part of a group called Community Voices for Education that tried and failed to get an election reform measure on the June ballot. The group says more robust elections would lead to better engagement across the board in elections, district households, and at the dais.
Challenge is good. Change is good. I think you have a chance to build more complacency if you know that you don't have anybody running against you.
As is, Kezlavka says, the election process is stacked against change.
You have to collect 200 signatures just to get your name on the ballot. And then you have to run in a primary in June within your sub-district. And then if you finish in the top 2 within that sub-district, then you go on to the general election where it's citywide voting.
And that costs money. It's one reason the grand jury recommended term limits and local-only elections. More opportunities to run and fewer barriers to do so tend to result in more diverse representation that rallies communities. But it's not all rosy. At the state capitol, term limits have also led to a less experienced legislative body and, early on, a greater reliance on bills sponsored by lobbyists. I asked Kezlavka if special interests are behind his push for reform.
If everything was going so well financially and everybody was doing what they said that they were going to do, these conversations wouldn't even be taking place.
We have the highest graduation rate in the state of California, #1.
Beiser defends his work on the school board. He says he's been an ardent supporter of music education and professional development for young teachers.
The campaign to run unopposed is a long 4-year campaign of listening to the voters and fighting the good fight on behalf of the kids.
Beiser says his own election to the board in 2010 is proof term limits aren't needed. He beat out incumbent Catherine Nakamura.
And if somebody's not effective, not fighting for the kids, not representing the constituents and the voters, then the voters have the opportunity to throw that person out every 4 years. So every 4 years, we have the opportunity to limit the term of a school board trustee.
Beiser had the support of the teachers union in his race against Nakamura, who had taken some blows for her support of a controversial superintendent.
Our job really is to listen to all of you.
Back at Sherman, the opinions on term limits and other reforms are just as mixed. But meeting attendee Simmons says there is common ground in this debate.
We had varying degrees of opinions, but the bottom line, everybody wants what's best for the students.
Beiser and his colleagues on the school board are to decide this month whether to put the issue before voters in November. Megan Burks, KPBS News.
From state to local elections, KPBS has created an online voter's guide to help you navigate candidates, ballot measures, and polling locations. KPBS reporter Claire Tragesser explains how it all works.
The KPBS Voter Guide, officially named Voter's Edge California, is custom built for you. When you type in your address or zip code, it will show you the candidates and propositions on your individual ballot. Go to kpbs.org/vote and enter your address. Then click on the June Ballot Guide. There you can see more information about each candidate. For example, let's look at the county supervisor race. You can see the candidates, their experience, top 3 priorities, KPBS stories about the candidate, and who supports the candidate. You can also see the candidates' answers to questions we pose to them. If some information is blank, that's because they haven't provided it to us just yet. The guide also has information about state and local ballot measures and where you go to vote. To access the voter guide, just head to our website at kpbs.org/vote. Claire Tragesser, KPBS News.
I'm Amna Nawaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, an Israeli intelligence firm tries to dig up dirt on the Obama administration's Iran deal negotiations. Coming up at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Plenty of sunshine and warm temperatures today, and they're expected for the next few days. Aaron Calandra explains when we might see a cooling trend in tonight's forecast.
Well, hopefully you enjoyed your day today. It was pretty nice out there today, and it's going to remain like this for the next several days. When you wake up in the morning, maybe a couple of extra clouds around, but by afternoon, plenty of sunshine. And across the southwest, it's looking nice. Maybe just some very light showers to the north and east of us, but a majority of the people here in the southwest are seeing some very dry and very warm conditions. 58 degrees tonight, partly cloudy. That is very average here in the metro. Looking across the region, Oceanside at 52 degrees as well. The interior areas from Ramona, 46 to Chula Vista at 54. Borrego Springs, 67 degrees tonight. It is warming up in Borrego Springs, extra hot as it usually is this time of year at 104. Mount Laguna, the place to be, at 75 degrees, and Ramona, 85. Oceanside around 73. Here in San Diego, we're talking 70 degrees, and air quality is pretty great. Look at that. Nice air quality for the next couple of days. We really don't have anything to worry about in this department. But as far as that drought goes, wow, it is pretty intense in parts of the interior areas of California through Phoenix and into the Four Corners. Luckily for us, though, here in San Diego, much of the county is seeing some pretty good conditions as far as the drought. Now, we have a high pressure system in place that is creating these dry and warm conditions in the deserts, but along the coast, the Pacific is just keeping it very pleasant. So from Tuesday through Saturday, it's going to stay dry and sunny. Temperatures in those low 70s to upper 60s. In the interior areas inland, it's going to be in the 80s. By the weekend, it drops down to the 70s and sunny. Very pleasant conditions. In the mountains, we're going to be in the 70s much of the week. For the weekend, again in the mid 60s. So cooling down but staying dry. And in the deserts, it's hot in the 100s. Triple digits. Make sure you're drinking plenty of water if you're heading into the deserts. And by the weekend, they're going to cool down to the 90s. For KPBS News, I'm Erin Calandra. Ebony, back to you.
Thousands of University of California workers are on strike this week. The union representing the 25,000 service workers say they're striking for income equality, but the UC system says the workers are asking for too much. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman has more.
The UC Service Workers Union represents custodians, gardeners, and maintenance workers. UC patient care staff and registered nurses are striking in solidarity with the workers. Isaac Zamora is a respiratory therapist at the Jacobs Medical Center in La Jolla. He says low wages are affecting quality of care.
And we don't have enough money to staff appropriately. So what that means is that we have to skip treatments. It means that if you have shortness of breath and the person in the next room to you has severe shortness of breath, I'm not going to go see you. I'm going to go see them.
A spokeswoman from the UC Office of the President says they offered the service workers a 3% raise each year for 4 years, plus a one-time payment of $750. The spokeswoman spokeswoman says the strike unfairly impacts patients.
The doctor that was on staff has no nurses to help, and so we were told the 18th of May would be the soonest that he could get back in.
Allison Gerberin says her husband had cancer removal surgery last month. On Monday, he was supposed to have a follow-up appointment.
There is no other doctor that can see him, and so for the moment they told us to, if I have a problem, go to an ER.
The Service Workers Union says they want a deal that keeps up with the rising cost of living. A spokeswoman for the Office of the UC President says currently service employees are getting a 2% raise and that the union will need to return to the bargaining table to negotiate any additional increases. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.